and let me know where you are joining me from. Hi, everyone. My name is Flora Daisy. I like to self-describe on this show because in the audience, sometimes we have people with low vision, people who are blind, and people with visual impairments. I am a Black woman. I'm always smiling. I'm currently rocking some long wavy hair, black and burgundy. This is like dark red. And I'm wearing right now, I would say, clothes that has the name Carl everywhere. Guess it's a symbol of love. It's from Paris, so who knows? I am today so excited to talk about self advocacy in accessibility. And I have an incredible guest speaker with me. Her name is Haley Moss. She is, oh my goodness, this lady, when I spoke with her, she's all about legal laws, but she's also an incredible human being who has a disability and who knows a lot about the disability community and accessibility. You know what? She's a writer, she's a speaker. I mean, the list can go on and on. So please help me welcome here Haley Moss. And today we are going to talk about top tips on accessibility and self advocacy. Hi, Haley.
Hi, Flora. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, I'm super excited to have you. And again, if you have any comment, if you have any question, if you want to just say hi to Haley, please put it in the comment section because we can see it and address them live. And Haley, please, can you tell the audience who you are and what you're passionate about?
Sure. And in the spirit of accessibility, just like you did, I will also give our folks a visual description. So I am Haley. I am a white woman with reddish brown hair. I have bangs and it's long. I'm wearing a black shirt and I'm wearing a silver heart pendant today because it is Valentine's Day. And I thought it would be festive and fun.
Yes.
But a little bit about me as well. I am proud to be a part of the disability community. I am autistic. I am someone who's always known that I was a part of the disability community. I feel like I've been very lucky in that regard, that I was diagnosed when I was 3 years old, and that was in the 90s when I know diagnoses of autism were not nearly as common as they are today. We didn't have the same tools and access for people to have that knowledge. I was largely non-speaking. And thankfully, my family believed in me and made sure to enroll me in different types of early intervention programs. So I got a lot of speech and occupational therapy. And then eventually it turned out that I had a lot to say, and not speaking is not the same as nothing to say. So once I did kind of find my voice, so to speak, I was really excited just to get to share what I had to know with the world, share what I was thinking and feeling and passionate about. I got into disability advocacy, though, by accident, which is always kind of a funny thing to say because I really never thought that I would be telling my story. I thought that this would be the kind of thing that was just for my teachers, my family, someone that I was dating, and someone that I worked with to know if it was necessary, and that's about it. But I got invited to speak at a conference when I was 13, and I thought it would be fun because it was in Orlando, and I wanted another trip to Disney World. I grew up in Florida. Going to Disney World was pretty common for me, but I wanted to go to Disney World again. And it turned out that what I said had resonated with a lot of people. And before I knew it, I was being offered to write a book about my experiences. And that has been a long journey since then. And since then, I've written several books. I went to law school. So you mentioned that I'm a lawyer, and I just got to do all sorts of other stuff to hopefully make people care about neurodivergent people and the disability community as a whole, and not just as a group of people to be pitied, because I don't want people to feel bad for me. I don't feel bad for me. My life is extremely full. There's so much joy in this journey, even though sometimes I do think my disability makes life a little bit inconvenient and means that I get to laugh a lot. Because sometimes I can't help but laugh at the challenges that I face, because when I think about them in the grand scheme of things, sometimes they are kind of funny.
Yes.
And I do think that's a big part of advocating for yourself too, is not only just having that skill set and developing it over time, but also finding joy in this, because it can feel very stressful. It can feel very exhausting and burn you out in so many ways to have a disability, especially one that's social in nature when you are having to communicate with other people, and the way that you communicate naturally is very different than the way that other people communicate. So why not find a little bit of joy in it? And there's so many things that I wouldn't trade for the world. I have no idea what it means to not have a disability. I have no idea what it means to be neurotypical. And quite honestly, I have no desire to know.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for taking the time to kind of share your journey, your experience, and your passion above all. It's so interesting that you said that you were diagnosed when you were young, at a time where even autism were not really well known or even more equipped. I know, for example,
Mhm.
I didn't know that I had a disability until a few years back, and I'm pretty much very well maintained, I would say, adult. But I had a case of mutism. So my voice will totally go for weeks or for months. And I will try to, communicate as much as I can with my hands or writing or, relying on someone. But I didn't know it was a disability because my situation, it will come and go. So it will depend. So I didn't feel I had a disability until someone I met said, or describe exactly what I had. And that
Mhm.
person was saying, I have a disability. And I was like, wait a minute, she has a disability. And this is what she explained. I went through that. And so I want to really reiterate in this group that sometimes there are a lot of disabilities, and some disabilities are not visible. Some people don't even know that they have a disability.
Mhm.
So really, Haley, thank you so much for giving us a little bit snippet of your journey. One of the things that you said regarding advocacy is that people don't need specialized skill to advocate for themselves. Sometimes people are going for interview, people are working in the work environment, or they're working with leaders who may not have good understanding around the disability community, around accessibility. How can a person advocate without having to go through frustration after frustration or limitations after limitations?
Oh my gosh, there is a lot to unpack here. And advocacy and self advocacy is not always this really big thing. We usually tend to make it out that it is, which is confusing. And I learned this very quickly. I did go to law school, so I know how to advocate professionally, but that doesn't mean that's the skill set that I use every day when I advocate for myself. I've learned even in the last couple of years, independently of my background, that even I'm a recovering people pleaser, for instance, and learning how to say no is part of advocating for myself. Sometimes realizing that an environment or a situation is a bad or poor fit for you is a form of advocating for yourself. No is a complete sentence. And sometimes I've realized with advocacy, we get very nervous. I remember one of the first times I feel like I was really advocating for myself on disability was going for accommodations in school because I was no longer a child. My parents could no longer go to bat for me, and I had to navigate the system by myself. And when I did, I was met with a lot of resistance because it was like, oh, well, the documentation you have from XYZ years ago isn't enough, this and that. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I regret that at the time I was young. I was 21 years old. And I quite frankly gave up on the process because I was overwhelmed, because
Mm,
I didn't know that I could keep going because they said no to me. But I realize now to extend grace to that version of myself. And I think a lot of us have moments that we don't advocate for ourselves. That maybe you don't disclose that you have a disability, somebody says something that's harmful to the disability community, and you've stayed silent.
mm,
There's so many times that you probably had the ability to advocate or the choice to, and you chose not to. And there's so many reasons why that might be. It might be your personal safety. It might be that you're not ready for that. It might feel uncomfortable or scary. Think of
yes.
how many times someone has said something that made you feel uncomfortable or that was mean, and you just sat there.
Yeah.
But you really wanted to say, that was horrible. And sometimes even just having that inner voice doing that advocacy could be enough to make you feel better. But
Yeah.
also realizing how and when to speak up is big. So for me, what I like to do when I know there's something I need to advocate for, like accessibility or an accommodation, I like to make a list of bullet points. I like to know exactly what I'm going to touch on that feels important. I do this even when I call customer service agents on the phone for a store because I hate having to call and say, hey, my order was wrong, because sometimes that happens.
Yes.
And I will make a list of what I want to say, even if it's just thanking the person for their time at the end. And if they could or couldn't help me, if I know if they can't help me, what can I do next? Is this the end of the road? But even just having that list of bullet points of things I want to touch on is really important. I would do this even in jobs of, okay, that I'm someone who always likes having recaps and meetings sent to me after because I'm a terrible note taker. But I will make a mental note or put in my notes or what little notes I do take to please ask for notes at the end. And usually somebody is more than happy to help with that. And there are many ways this happens in my life. Usually somebody will offer to send me an AI summary. Somebody actually took notes and will be kind enough to circulate them, which is my personal favorite thing that happens. Or they will say, here's a recording of the meeting, go figure it out. In this case, I'm a little bit less happy, but in all fairness, they did indeed accommodate me as best they can. And then I am left to my own devices to either take my own notes or run it through a note taker or summary or something else, or pray that someone has a recap for me that they actually took. And the cool thing about accessibility, and I think we all probably are aware of this when we think about it, is it benefits all of us. So even when I'm advocating for something that seems as small as please send me a recap, it makes sure that everybody's on the same page. And coming from legal, there's proof that something happened in writing. It's great. I do this even when I verbally will ask for an accommodation. I will say, hi, it was so great to meet with you. We talked about this accommodation going into place for me. And then at least it shows that I tried, we were there, that conversation happened, and they can't go, oh no, we never talked about that. Yeah, we did. I sent you a nice little recap of what we talked about. There's little things like that that have helped along my advocacy journey. And also just learning to be like, wait, the way people treat me because of my disability or just because they're treating me poorly for whatever reason, that's big too. I think sometimes we struggle to figure out the differences. Is this disability related? Is this human being related? Or is this a me related thing? And oftentimes those lines feel kind of blurred. But there are things I know that are definitely disability related, and that's my turn to speak up because I also recognize, at least for me, I'm in a position of privilege. I get to sit here on LinkedIn Live and have this conversation with you, and people trust me and look to me for advice. I know sometimes it is my duty to be the person who speaks up and speaks out. And I also want to do that so other people feel comfortable speaking up and speaking out because it can feel very lonely to be the only person with a disability in the room. You don't sometimes want to be that person. I have been the only disabled or neurodivergent person in the room. I've also been the only young person in the room. I've also been the only woman in the room. We've all had one of those experiences, and sometimes people don't know and they can't learn if nobody says anything. If everybody stays silent, they're going to assume we're all okay with the status quo, even if they're denying accommodations or that they aren't being as inclusive as they possibly could be.
Yeah.
That when we know better, we can do better.
Definitely. Definitely. Oh my goodness. You, my friend, you drop nuggets after nuggets. One is, be okay with who you are and understand also that your needs are valid. Like you said it. If you feel some type of way, put it on a bullet point. And I like that part because highly sometimes when we feel frustration, the words sometimes it doesn't come right. It just doesn't. So having those bullet point exactly about the thing you want to address is really good, and sending it via email. I know sometimes it can take a different tone depending on how you send things, but at the same time, if it's in a written format, it's easy to recall that back if someone said, no, that's not what was said. Yes, that's what was recorded, and anybody can address maybe the nuance there. They might say, oh no, that's not what I meant, I'm really sorry. And this is a learning curve for the individual who got offended and the other person, because we don't know what we don't know. If someone stepped on your foot by accident and you don't say anything, they wouldn't know sometimes that they did step on the foot. So
they will know, but they don't know that they actually hurt you when they stepped on your foot, because sometimes it could feel like a lot and sometimes it might not. It depends on the person, that they might have different receptors to pain.
That's true. That is so true. Oh my goodness. Guys, if you have any question or if you are agreeing with what Haley is saying there, please give us a reaction or ask the question in a comment. If you have anything to share based on your own experience as well, feel free to do that in a comment. If even if you're watching the replay, we love going back to the episode and check all of that. One thing that you said, Haley, that is also important is really having the courage, and you kind of describe that even throughout your your journey and also self-advocacy. One, because I know for a fact that if your mindset is not in the right place, sometimes even advocating for yourself can be wrong, or sometimes going for promotions, opportunities, and things like that can fall flat. And you may question, is that a disability? Is that maybe skill, lack of skill? Is that, no, sometimes it could be just the mindset. First, when I started my entrepreneurship, and it could be like you, right? When I started my entrepreneurship, I was excited about it, but Haley, I was scared to death. Like,
Me too.
I was
Me
like,
too.
nobody's gonna listen to me. They're probably gonna slap me back and forth and things like that. And so when I show up in front of people, it was with that scarcity mindset. So my words, all of that kind of showcase doubt or maybe, fear in there. But you said it takes courage to go for the things you want. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I had a similar experience starting my entrepreneurship journey too, because I quit a nice, wonderful law firm job to go speak and advocate and actually try to make people care and do better at disability inclusion and neurodiversity acceptance. And I remember quitting my job being like, oh my God, what the heck did I just do? And then I told myself, you know what, I'm going to give it a year. If it goes well, great. And if not, I'll say I took a little career sabbatical and then I'll go back to law practice and say, it's been fun. And it's been 5 years and I never went back. So joke's on me. I guess it worked out. But I do think, and then everyone would always say that you're really brave or you have courage. And I was like, I don't know if it's that I'm brave as much as there's something that I want. And I know that if I don't try, it will eat at me and I'll always have that what if. I also think that I was young and therefore a little bit more fearless. And I think that happens to a lot of young people is you still think you're invincible. I was 25 when I decided to quit my job. And I was like, what do I have to lose? I'm 25. I could always pivot back. I could always go back. I could always do something else. That's a whole other kind of conversation to have on courage is I think there is that fearlessness that comes with being young and still feeling like you have your whole life in front of you to, make mistakes and screw up and learn and keep growing, but we can still grow. And age and time is not that determining factor.
Yeah.
We all have more time than we think we do, God willing. And age doesn't determine your amount of wisdom or courage. And there's times that I don't feel like I have that right mindset, but I know that I have to do something because I don't want to question that decision later.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Even
I would never say I did it.
disability also is not an excuse not to go after what you want. True, there are true limitations, but there is way, like you said, you wanted it, so you gave yourself a chance, right?
Exactly. And same with advocacy. So something that you were even mentioning when we were talking about the bullet points was that you wrote it out. And I know some of us, it's easier for us to write than to talk. I know this is especially true for a lot of my other neurodivergent friends, myself included. I'm a better writer than I am a talker. Which usually surprises people when I say that because I talk a lot and I literally talk for a living, but I am a better writer than a talker, at least in my own brain. I can make things sound cohesive a lot faster. I could take my time to think through what I want to say and not trip over myself. That all those things matter. And even if you communicate with gestures, if you are a non-speaker, if you are a writer, whatever feels most natural to you, that still takes courage, that still takes advocacy. And I do think that showing up as yourself is always an act of courage. It's always a brave thing to do. And I always feel weird when people say I'm brave because I don't think I'm brave. I am scared of a lot of things. I am scared. I grew up in Florida. I am scared of all the random wildlife I've seen my whole life. I am scared of snakes. I am scared of assorted reptiles. I am scared of all sorts of stuff that lives outside. I hear a noise. I am running like nobody's business. And I don't run, okay? Like your girl does not run. My knees have not let me run since I was in high school. So I don't run. My washer dryer makes a noise. I am like scared. Like I'm scared of a lot of things. I don't consider myself brave for that reason. And then people will still say, it still takes a lot of courage because, you didn't have to disclose you have a disability. You could have probably just went about your life if you wanted to. And I was like, but I can't imagine any other way. I fell into advocacy by mistake. I thought that I would just publish under a fake name and live my life and be like, this was my alter ego, kind of like a Hannah Montana persona. And that's not what happened. I was like, you know what? If I can help somebody, I will do it. I'm happy to put my story on display if it can help another person. And then I'm like, if you don't accept me for who I am, I don't want to know you.
Yeah.
I don't
I
want to hang
love,
out with
I
you.
love
Thank you for showing yourself the door so I don't have to go find out later. Like, it's honestly made my life a lot easier in that respect because it takes less time to find people who are not accepting of who you are. And I think when you have a disability, that's a big thing, is you don't want to be seen as the disabled person in the
yeah,
room all the time. Even though my disabled identity and neurodivergent identity is a huge part of who I am, it is not my entire personality and it is not everything about me that you need to know.
exactly. And I think it's almost like what is happening here right now with
Mhm.
Valentine's Day,
Mhm.
right? Some people have partners, some people have husbands, some people have kids, some people like there's so many identity in one
Mhm.
individual that we cannot just take one side and say this is it, this is just what that person is,
Mhm.
right? We sometimes are parents, we are
Yeah,
sometimes like there's so much. So I love that you say, hey, the disability is one part of me,
exactly.
is not the only part in me. And I see Dr. Rocky said hi. I want to acknowledge that. Hi, Dr. Rocky. How are
Hi.
you doing? And guys, please don't be shy. Drop some comments before or after is fine, meaning through this live or later on is totally fine. But hey, don't be shy. Say hi. Advocate for yourself.
Exactly. Sometimes even just being brave enough to say hi or ask a question, or even sending us a question after the fact. Because I know so many times I do trainings and I will open the floor to questions and nobody will ask a question. And then I will just give everybody my contact information to go, hey, I know that maybe you don't want to ask a question in front of like 80 people, but you might have a question 2 days from now, or you might want to just ask it privately. And 9 times out of 10, somebody will send me a question privately because I said, here's another option for you in case you don't want to ask in front of your closest friends and colleagues and other people you know.
You know what I
And
call
it's just
that?
creating opportunities for people to
Thank
advocate
you.
for themselves. That's how I like to look at what we
But
do.
that's
We
true.
create those opportunities.
Wow. And I love that because I think that opportunities like that, we can also take them and implement them in the work environment. We can implement them in the digital environment or the
Yeah,
social environment. Sometimes we just think that things have to go one way, which is not always true, because we are all uniquely beautiful people, very diverse. The way I'm approaching certain things is probably not the same way you're approaching that same thing, Ellie, and anybody else. So I just love that. You mentioned a good point. You said sometimes you can be in the room where you are advocating for yourself
mhm.
or for others, and the room is quiet. Should
Yep.
you quit or should you be resilient and continue? Let me hear your thought.
I think usually is up to you to decide what feels best in the moment. There are times I will stop, and there are times it's like, this is really important. We need to keep having this conversation. But I also realize the room is quiet because sometimes people need to think. It's not always a reflection on you. And I know at least this is me, and this is definitely me being very socially self conscious because I do communicate differently. If the whole room is suddenly silent, I'm like, oh no. Everything went over their heads. Nothing resonated. I screwed up. This was bad. And that's not what it means when people are quiet. People are quiet because they need to process,
Yeah.
because maybe they need time. I realize that a lot of the time I talk a lot and it's a lot of information for people to take in. And they need an extra couple moments to process that. Or maybe they want to come back to something like this live later and then think, wait, now I have something I want to add to this conversation. That they don't have to have that answer right now. And you don't need that immediate feedback to decide whether or not you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Sometimes doing a good job is not kind of related to how many people are applauding you or how
Mhm.
many people are speaking up with you. Sometimes it's what feels good in your soul and that you know is the right decision. Sometimes I know speaking up is the right decision. There are times that I haven't spoken up and I've walked away saying, you know what? I needed to protect my peace today. I was tired. And then there's times I think I really should have done it. I should have said something. I wish I had said something.
Yeah.
And then I will find the time that I can hopefully redeem myself, or that there's someone I know privately in that room that I could have said, did this feel right to you too? Because I don't think this felt right. And I didn't know how to say something. I didn't have the words, or I was scared, or I was
Mm.
shy. Because sometimes I don't want to be the person who stands up. I don't want to be the spotlight on me in the room sometimes. Like, I know that because of my job, sometimes I am very public facing, but I also don't always want it to be, oh, Haley said this or Haley did that. I'm like, I just want to be a person too. And I think that's a hard line that so many of us who are marginalized have to toe sometimes is, am I going to be a person today, or am I going to be an advocate today?
Mm.
And sometimes you choose to be the person and you just want to exist in the moment. You don't want to draw attention to something. You don't want to speak up for yourself or your community.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean you're a bad advocate. It just means that you chose this moment to just exist in your humanity and personhood more so than put on your disability hat or your advocate hat and go,
Yes.
now's the time to say something.
Yeah, no, and I respect that. I think that, what is interesting as well, Haley, is that most people think that they gotta get things right, but
Mhm.
no, we don't. I am here. Sometime I'm speaking and I just tumble on my words because, again, English is not my first language, but I'm just rocking with what I got in my mind. Sometimes I'm like, oh, what is the word? I'm like, and throw something. It's okay. It's okay. We all can make a mistake and keep
Mhm.
on moving. Nobody created anything that was perfect from the first go or the second go or whatever. The
Mhm.
journey is still a long journey. Practice only makes it perfect. And guess
Mhm.
what? Some people will not buy what you are offering, meaning if you're advocating for yourself or for others, or if you're trying to push certain things. Sometimes there is a buy-in, sometimes there is none, or sometimes people just need a little bit of time. Girl, we are getting toward the end of the show, and I really wanna appreciate the time that you spend with us. Most of the people also in my audience are very technical, I will say. So I want to just throw you a question, and if you don't have an answer right now, it's totally fine.
That's okay.
But I would love to hear what you think. If you had at some point in time any limitation based on a digital product like website, maybe you were trying to shop online, take some courses online, or something more digital like an app or a document, because you mentioned that you have autism,
Mhm.
and I'm just curious to know if at any point in time you had something limiting you from the experience you wanted.
Oh, yes. So I'm a very sensory creature. For me, like a lot of sound and a lot of visuals are sometimes amplified in my brain. So I do really poorly when things are kind of bouncing around. There's too many colors, too many things going on at the same time. It's just very overwhelming from a sensory standpoint for me. And then I probably won't look at things. I know, especially with podcasts, I do not listen to podcasts, and it usually kills people when I tell them this. They get very upset with me. And I don't listen to podcasts because I'm a visual learner. I need either a transcript or captioning of some sort to follow along. So I always tell people, make a transcript of your podcast. It's great for your search engine optimization. And then people like me or people who are deaf or hard of hearing, we can follow along. It's awesome. I would rather read your conversation than listen to it in my ears because I can't follow it for that long. And I
Mhm.
know this is weird, especially because people love audiobooks and they love podcasts as far as digital accessibility goes. And I literally just recorded an audiobook like 2 months ago. It came out 2 or 3 weeks ago. So my last book had an audiobook version. I'm very excited about it. And I am not somebody who does audiobooks or podcasts, but for me, recording it was like fine because I had to read the actual text that I wrote to make that go into the world. So I was like, okay, this makes more sense now. Now I understand audiobooks a little bit better because it really is just auditory captioning in some ways.
But I love it. You've given opportunity to people because
You
people
want
can
to
use it either way. Some people can have the written book and some people can have the audio book, which is fantastic. Haley, where can people find you to maybe, continue the conversation or for any request?
You could say hello to me on the platform that feels most comfortable or accessible to you. So you could always visit my website at haleymoss.com. You could say hello to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, or Instagram, whatever feels best for you. I always try my best to keep up with my inboxes, but it's ideal if you mention how we met because usually my inbox feels like a black hole. I don't always know how to keep track of things. So I always tell people, remind me how we met, like say you saw me here or we connected through this. And then I'll be like, oh, okay. That means I know you. You're not a stranger because we're friends now. Because we were in community together. We built a community. We did something. And that usually helps jog my memory a little bit and it makes you
Love it.
more important in my brain than
Love it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you, Haley. You were just amazing. I appreciate your advocacy and you sharing a little bit to give courage and inspiration to everyone. So, guys, take action. Follow the tips. And we'll see you. I will see you next Friday. Bye bye, everyone.